Hi everybody, this is Ashley with Ashley Says So, and I am back with another Old Hollywood Scandals video. This video is going to be about the incomparable, angel voice, David Ruffin. Let's get to it. Oh, I got a new mic. What it sound like? Are we doing the thing or not? Leave it in the comments because y'all know what it is. All right, let's get to it. Davis Eli Ruffin was born January the 18th, 1941 in a small town called Wynot, Mississippi. He was the third son of Elias Eli Ruffin and Ophelia Ruffin, and they had three other children, and their names were Quincy B. Ruffin, Rita Mae Ruffin, and Jimmy Lee Ruffin. And sadly, David went through his life not knowing much of anything about his mother Ophelia because she passed away when he was only 10 months old. The year after his mother died, David's father, Eli, remarried a lady named Earlene, and Miss Earlene was a school teacher. She also loved to sing the gospel, honey, and this is something that she, Eli, and the children all had in common. So soon they started touring around as a family gospel group, singing at everybody church. Y'all know how it is. They even opened for Mahalia Jackson and the Five Blind Boys of Mississippi. And this is all well and good, but David's father turned out to be a really strict man. And he was hard on his children. He wouldn't let them do many things, and then he started beating on them. And naturally, the children started looking for a way out, especially David. So when a man came into town by the name of Eddie Bush, telling David as well as his father Eli that, look, I can take David and he can come with me. He can be under my tutelage. I'll mold him to become a great Baptist minister. David is like, yes, please take me with you. And his father was also like, yeah, take him and mold him, bring him up in the word of God. But child, it's already finna get messy, honey. Eddie Bush wasn't for the right. He wasn't for the right. Him or his wife, Dorothy Helen. As soon as they took David under their wing, they changed his name from David Ruffin to Little David Bush. That is how they billed him when he was touring around singing everywhere. And you know why? That moolah, baby. That money. Because any money that Little David Bush brought in went to his father or his guardian, Mr. Eddie Bush. See how that works? And yeah, he did have David singing gospel at first. David even joined the Dixie Nightingales while he was under the care of Eddie Bush. So he had him singing gospel at first, but honey, soon he started seeing like Sam Cooke, Jackie Wilson, and others go to secular music, and they were making more money. Child, Eddie Bush forgot all about gospel, forgot all about the church, and probably even forgot all about God, the way he was acting. Then sat up there and lied to that boy daddy. Yeah, I'm gonna take him and mold him into a man of God. Child, he took David to Detroit and had that boy singing all kind of blues, child. And some sources even went so far as to say Mr. Eddie Bush was also putting hands on David. Like he took that guardianship father role too far, pretty much disciplining David whenever he felt like it. So now we're at the part of the story where David is in Detroit with the Bushes. And David did not mind this move to Detroit at all because his brother Jimmy Ruffin was already in Detroit. He had got a job at the Ford Motor Company, and he also was trying to get his music career off the ground. So David kind of just came up there and joined his brother. He didn't live with his brother, but he had a family contact in Detroit. That made his move much easier. While David was still living with the Bushes, he released two songs, You and I and Believe Me, and the year was 1958. But y'all know how I go. A lot of times when people release their first music, they release it out into the world, but then somebody tell the music, hey, come on back in the room. You ain't doing nothing. And that's what happened. David's music did not go anywhere. And David is around 17 years old. His music didn't go anywhere. It was a flop. The Bushes are still making him call himself David Bush. Also, like I told you, now they're kind of hitting on him, and David is getting tired of this. He's growing into his own man, and he needs to make some money. And he's already figured out that Eddie Bush don't know what he doing. Baby, he might as well stayed in the gospel stuff. He don't know how to make nobody succeed in the secular world. David understands this, and David leaves the Bushes. And I'm sure he had heard the name Gordy kind of rolling around Detroit because they did not have Motown at that time, but the Gordy family was still very well to do. Pops Gordy had some money, and his children were not doing too bad either. And so David kind of shimmied his way into Pop Gordy's life. And he started living with Pops Gordy, and in return for his room and board, he would help Pops with construction work. David was a smart cookie too, baby. He knew exactly what he was doing because living with Pops, eventually he ran into Berry Gordy. And David and Barry took a liking to each other. And I do believe that he admired not only Barry, but the whole Gordy family. And I'm sure David, because he knew how to play the game, baby. So I'm sure he's doing little stuff kind of to stroke Barry's ego. He's saying stuff like, man, I just want to get like you. You got this good job. Your daddy got all this money. Like, that's why I'm glad y'all done took me in, because I can learn from you guys. So David is running that game, but it's not all game. He was a broke young boy and he wanted to get to a higher level. And all this kind of talk did him well, because eventually Barry started telling David about how he was a songwriter and he wanted to start his own record label. So David is working along with Pops, he's doing the construction. And soon he finds out that the building that he's doing construction on is actually going to be Hitsville, USA, Motown. But before it was called Motown, it was Tamla Records. And so David would be inside of Tamla Records, just helping out, doing what he can. He was kind of like an apprentice. And there was another little smart cookie running around there that could sing. He had the same little scheme that David had going on. Let me get in here and charm my way into these people's hearts and see what it can get me, because I want to sing too. And that fella's name was Marvin Gaye. But see, Marvin had a leg up, because Barry's sister Anna thought Marvin was sure enough fine, baby, and she wanted him for herself. So Marvin, it was a little easier to get him in the door than it was for David Ruffin. Eventually, someone does get signed, but it's not David, it's his brother Jimmy Ruffin. But David wasn't too worried about it, honey, because you see, there was a fine, young, yellow thing hanging around the corner looking at him. And her name was Sandra Bourne. David spots Sandra, and he comes walking over there with all his charm, and he charms her off her feet, because David at this time is a Southern gentleman. And y'all might not believe me, but even the Gordy said at this time David Ruffin is all no ma'am and yes sir, and the perfect gentleman. Sandra just couldn't fight that baby. They started dating and eventually they married, and they had 3 daughters. There was Cheryl, Nedra, and Kimberly. The year is 1961, and things are going well for David. He's married. Motown even extends a record contract with him, and he signs as a solo act. But once again, everything he put out stayed right there on those shelves. They just didn't go anywhere. But David kept on working. He kept on praying. He kept on hoping. And in 1964, that light came shining in on him, honey. And that is because Elbridge Al Bryant had been fired from the Temptations. Now, some people don't know this, but David was not just in like that. It was actually Jimmy Ruffin that was this close to being the 5th member of the Temptations. They were really looking at him to be Al's replacement. But child, they had that New Year's Eve ball, and I don't know if it happened like on the movie, but if it did happen like on the movie, Jimmy sealed his own fate when he was up there talking about, David Ruffin, my little brother, everybody, come up on the stage. Y'all remember that part? Baby David got on that stage and blew everybody. He just,
now wait a minute, I feel alright. I feel alright.
Yes, I feel lost. He blew everybody away, including himself probably, and the Temptations. After that performance, the Temptations wanted David Ruffin in their group like now. So he joins the Temptations, and at first he doesn't really make a splash. They don't automatically turn him into the lead singer. He's singing background. And it is believed that Barry and some of the other people in Motown are telling Smokey like, hey, you need to write a song for David. And Smokey was like, not yet, not yet. I have to write a song to fit his voice. He didn't want to just put out no mess. You know what I'm saying? He wanted to get the right song for David's voice. And that is when he wrote My Girl. History happened that day when David sang that song, and that is when he became the full lead, outside of Eddie and Paul having leads here and there. But you know what I mean, David was pretty much the main lead of the Temptations. Now that David has made My Girl, y'all pretty much know the story when it comes towards the Temptations. So now let's get into a little bit of tea. And most of his tea comes from his relationships as well as the stuff with the Temptations. So now David Ruffin is on top of the world. He has worked himself up. He's appearing all over every TV screen. He is famous, honey. And y'all know every time what comes with fame. All of a sudden, that little wife at home ain't good enough. Sandra, get off of him. Get off of him, Sandra. You ain't good enough no more. Enter a lady named Jenna Sapia, or Sapia, or Sapia. I don't know, but we're gonna say Sapia. I'm pretty sure she's strolling into the club looking good. Probably had them little curls in her hair, just like she got on that picture right there. And David walks up to her, so she says, and he introduces himself. Hello, I'm David Ruffin. Listen, baby, if you have seen a clip of David Ruffin being interviewed, he was smooth. He was another one of them cats. You know, like I said on the Billie Holiday video. Some men regular, some men is cats. David Ruffin was definitely a cat. Introduces himself. Jenna says that David did not tell her he was married. And I do believe this because no man that's trying to flirt and get a woman is going to tell that woman that he's married. And also, it is not like Motown put up big billboards saying, hey, one of our stars got married today. Wasn't no money in them telling the world that David Ruffin was married. So I do believe Jenna when she says that she didn't know he was married. But sis, you ended up finding out sooner or later that he was married. And Jenna's excuse in a nutshell was pretty much like, by that time, I was in love with him. You know, by that time, we had a relationship. So David gets with Jenna and apparently falls head over heels for her. He even left his wife alone, or so he told Jenna. Because some sources say that he definitely did not leave his wife totally alone. And I'm gonna tell y'all why when we get to that part. And not only did he supposedly not leave his wife alone, he didn't leave every other lady that he was messing with alone. Child, he was cheating on Jenna back to back, honey. They even said one time he brought that woman home crabs. And Jenna, I hate to say it, but y'all know we keep it real. Jenna was kind of crazy a little bit because allegedly it said when she came to him and it's like, David, you gave me crabs. This man told her, them folks coming to the Apollo, they just nasty, stinking, and dirty. And they done left their crabs on the seat. And I done sat on them same nasty, dirty seats. And them folks done gave me the crabs. And they pretty much gave the crabs to you too. And she bought it. Those nasty people at the Apollo messing around with each other and gave my man the crab just because he's sitting on them seats. And he done messed around and gave them to me. Surely he wasn't sleeping with no other female. Let's move on. Things are going well with him and the Temptations, but David is really starting to get a big head, and he just walking around full of himself. Y'all know who bringing the money. What you got to say? Otis, is anybody coming to see you? I didn't think so. And in the midst of this new attitude, he also had a new woman on his arm. And her name was Tammy Terrell. And at first, his relationship with Tammy Terrell is kind of like, you know, just hush hush. They're just kind of messing around with each other. And this is where also details kind of get murky because remember when I told y'all he did not leave his wife Sandra alone? Well, there's a rumor going around that David was messing with Tammy Terrell, dating Jenna, and somewhere along the line during that whole ordeal, he got his wife Sandra pregnant with their last child? I don't know. Maybe y'all can confirm that for me, okay? But besides all of that, David ended up really feeling Tammy. He felt Tammy more than Jenna. And he left Jenna. And unfortunately, by the time he left Jenna, she was 2 months pregnant. Now, the year was supposedly 1966, and that is when he fully got into a relationship with Tammy Terrell. From what I researched, it seems like Jenna became very, very bitter at this. Because first of all, she's pregnant. Second of all, he leaves her to be with Tammy Terrell, and he tells the world about it. You know, Tammy is no longer a secret. Tammy is his woman. This is his boo. He's telling the world more about her than he ever said about Sandra, and definitely more than he ever said about Jenna. I mean, he parading his new boo around too, honey. Y'all know they at every club scene. They at all the shows together. There's tale that he and Tammy would ride around in his limousine with his glasses painted on the side. You know, everybody had to know that it's David Ruffin in this car with his new boo, Tammy Terrell. But while David is doing all this flossing with Tammy Terrell, Jenna is over here mad. She said that David getting with Tammy Terrell is what started his downfall. She pretty much insinuated that Tammy Terrell got David Ruffin hooked on drugs. And I can't confirm that, but I can confirm that things were not all good and the David Ruffin Tammy Terrell paradise. David started to hit on Tammy. And from what I researched, it was because Tammy Terrell wasn't no joke. David was still cheating, still doing what he wanted to do. And Tammy, instead of just being like, you know, okay, I'm just gonna stay at home, she was talking to other men too. I don't know if she slept with them, but she would welcome their attention. She would be okay with that because she felt like, hey, How can you get mad at me, David Ruffin? You sitting up here sleeping with other females. So if a man come up to me and tell me I'm beautiful and he want to take me out sometime, yes, I'm probably going to entertain him because you're doing what you wanted to do. David was not used to that. David was used to a woman saying and doing what he told her to do and letting him cheat in peace, and Tammy Terrell was not having it. So David started to hit on Tammy Terrell. He started trying to put her in her place, to show her that she was the woman. She sits her behind at home and she looks pretty and minds him, and he does what he wants to do. But all the hitting in the world was not finna change Tammy Terrell. This lady was a superstar in her own right. Sorry, if you want somebody that's a nobody and that's gonna sit at home and do what you say, you know where to go. But that's not me. That's pretty much the attitude that Tammy Terrell had. And like I said, all the beating in the world was not going to change that. Now I'm pretty sure she tried to change her outside behavior to placate David Ruffin, but the fiery, passionate Tammy Terrell in the inside was not going to go anywhere. I don't care how many beatings you were going to give. But then David Ruffin took it too far, and that is when he took his white motorcycle helmet and bust Tammy Terrell in her head. And per Otis Williams, this was not the first time that David Ruffin had hit Tammy in the head with something. Supposedly he had taken a lamp before and bust Tammy upside the head with the lamp. But I guess the motorcycle helmet was a little bit too much. And let me tell you something, let me get this out in the clear. Why is everybody that Tammy's dating is busting this woman upside the head with something? And I mean literally, because I'm always describing a fight or something as somebody busting somebody upside the head. But in this case, I mean literally. The guys that Tammy Terrell dated were hitting her in the head. I've read multiple stories of abuse where women and men were abused, but this time we're talking about women. I've read multiple stories, but not many of them have said that a man zeroes in and busts you upside the head, like hit you upside the head. The only two reasons that I've heard of is that the man wants to hide the bruises. He don't want it to be able to show up on your body nowhere. That's the first excuse. But in Tammy Terrell's case, I think that somewhere earlier in their relationship, Tammy had told these guys, you know, I have headaches sometimes. I have debilitating headaches. My head really hurts. And I think that they were being cruel by hitting this woman upside the head, because what's the chance that the two abusive men you date are like just focused on hitting you in the head? That just don't make no sense to me. I mean, is it just me or do y'all feel this way too? Let me know. Like I said though, this helmet incident was too much for Tammy. She ended up leaving David right where he stood, and it is said that in 1969 she did a Ebony magazine interview, and in that interview she said that the trauma and the emotional pain that she experienced in her past relationships, she felt like that had something to do with her headaches. So whether the beatings that these men gave her contributed to her death or not, Tammy Terrell herself, when she found out she had a tumor, must have felt like it was these dudes that did it. And Tammy wasn't the only one that felt like that, because when she passed away in 1970, Marvin Gaye also felt like that. He was going around mad at David Ruffin because he felt like, man, you sit up there hitting on her, and because you hit on her, you caused this tumor. So it is said that Marvin Gaye really did feel that way, and he was fighting mad. And that is very out of character for Marvin Gaye. He's very shy and kept to himself. Yes, he had his own demons, but Marvin wasn't never just ready to fight nobody. You know what I'm saying? So that shows how much he truly loved Tammy Terrell. I have pretty much confirmed that David Ruffin has started using drugs. Now, we're not sure if Tammy Terrell got him on drugs, but he is using drugs at this point, and it is starting to show, especially when it comes to him performing with the Temptations. Because this, along with his ego, made David Ruffin a complete mess. He started missing rehearsals. Whenever it would be small stuff or that he felt like wasn't worthy of him or upscale enough for him, he had got this kind of attitude where, you know, you fellas got it. You fellas got it. You know, call me when the big stuff come along. That's when I'll put on the show for y'all. This is the way David is acting now. He also is starting to get a lot of nerve about himself now. There is one incident that says that they all were appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that part is true. I'll leave the link so you can watch the video in the description, but the tale goes like this. Before the show started, David Ruffin and the Supremes are backstage, all right? They're getting ready for the show. Diana is backstage fussing about something. She's snapping on everybody. She's also snapping on Mary Wilson and Cindy Birdsong. And she has her staff like flocking around her, you know, Miss Ross, do you need this? Miss Ross, do you need that? She's basically the star. Y'all know what it is. And I'm not sure, but I think she says something to the effect of, you know, it's not done yet, or y'all need to get that done, or something like that. David is just watching from the sidelines like, Who's she talking to? Like, wait a minute, who she thinks she is? Because he's not used to this type of behavior. You know, when they tour, they're not always together. He's not at the Supreme shows. They're not at the Temptation shows. So he's not used to seeing Diana acting like this. So he's coming up to Mary like, so is this what y'all been going through? Like, is this the way she acts all the time? And Mary pretty much responds like, yeah, you know, she's the star. This is how she is all the time. And David gets upset about that. And he's like, you know what? I'ma fix this heifer. She thinks she know what she doing. Oh, I'm about to fix her when we get on this stage. And then he gets even more upset because he finds out that Berry Gordy has changed the key to the music on the song I Know I'm Losing You, which they were to perform that night along with the Supremes. Berry changed that key to a note that Diana could hit. She was having trouble hitting it in the regular key of the song. This made David furious because he's like, that's a Temptation song. You know, you trying to mess me up. That's my song. You trying to have me out here looking crazy just so you can have Diana Ross out here looking good. So David is like, you know, it's on and popping now. Diana doesn't know this, but everybody else knew about it. Baby, they get out on that stage and David straight murders Diana Ross on that stage. Baby, she shouldn't even came out there. You know what I'm saying? Diana Ross was out there sounding like trash, baby, compared to David Ruffin. Like Diana just or something, you know the way she sing, and David just hitting them notes, he pounding them. And then he really shows Diana up when he hits that note that she could not hit. He starts to screaming and hits that high note that she changed the whole song for because she couldn't hit. Straight murdered Diana Ross. Y'all see what I'm talking about when y'all watch the clip and David get the hollering and carrying on? Child, Diana never stood a chance. And yeah, we all laughing and stuff and having a good time about it, but I tell you who wasn't laughing. Baby, when David got backstage, y'all know who was standing there like this? Y'all know who that was, Berry Gordy. How dare you mess with his baby? He was furious. And he told David so. He let him know, like, you wasn't supposed to do that. Don't ever in your life try to upstage Diana. Don't ever do her like that. You know, he was taking up for his woman, but David didn't care. I'm telling y'all, he had got on a whole nother level. Now, that's if all this is true, okay? But David had got on a whole nother level in his mindset. So he started talking back to Berry and was pretty much like, I'll do what I want, and you sitting up here trying to tell me what to do, but what you gonna say to the fact that Diana Ross and Eddie Kendricks messing around? What you gonna say to that? Yeah, Eddie had your girl. Ooh, they said Berry Gordy got lit on fire, honey. And I don't know exactly what happened after that, but I do know that David Ruffin bets to be glad that he wasn't fired and his voice was still bringing in the hits, because people saying stuff less than that to Berry Gordy have been fired like this. This right here is another incident that gives David Ruffin an even bigger ego. And, you know, he starts to treat the Temptation any kind of way. Kind of like Diana Ross started to do some of the Supremes. David Ruffin, probably not as bad as Diana Ross, but he did think that he was better than them. And that's when word starts floating around the studio that David Ruffin wants to change the name of the Temptations. But get this though, a lot of people think that David Ruffin wanted to change the name to David Ruffin and the Temptations. But when I researched, I saw that David actually wanted the name to be David Ruffin and the Temptations featuring Eddie Kendricks, because see, him and Eddie had linked up at this time, okay? So he was trying to throw his friend a bone too. But boy, ain't nobody finna say all that. That's a mouthful. You doing too much, sir. I could have told you no, because I'm not finna be saying all that. I'm just gonna say the Temptations. And that's what they told him. Boy, bye. And David not getting his way with the Temptations and things not going well with Tammy Terrell and all that kind of stuff was not a good thing for Jenna, because David did return to Jenna, but he started beating on her as well. Not only was he beating on Jenna, he also started beating on the son that they had together. And that son's name was David E. Sapia at first. But David had the boy's name changed to David Eli Ruffin Jr. But what's the whole thing of showing him love and changing his name if you just gonna beat on him? And not only beat on the boy, but beating on his mama. I do remember though that I did read somewhere that she did try to leave at one point. She tried to go leave with her parents and they told her, baby, no ma'am. You can come home, but that little half breed you got, baby girl, he gotta stay right where he at. And Jenna, being a mother, correctly told her parents, well, y'all can go where the sun don't shine because this is my son right here. So it is what it is. So back to the story. David is now beating on Jenna. He's acting a fool when it comes to the Temptations. According to the official source, David Ruffin was fired on June 22nd, 1968 because he missed a show that night. He was trying to impress his new girlfriend, and that new girlfriend was Dean Martin's daughter, Barbara Gail Martin. And several of the Temptations said, they were telling David, dude, you're on thin ice. Well, I ain't worried about it, man. I'm out here with my girl. You know what I'm saying? I gotta impress the ladies. This my girl. I'm trying to show her a good time. And they said that he genuinely was trying to impress this lady because this is Dean Martin's daughter. Unfortunately, it wasn't that much impressing in the world because guess what? After he got fired, that money was gone and Barbara Gail got her tail up out of there too. And that's the official source of why David was fired. But I read somewhere that the main thing that got David Ruffin fired from the Temptations is that he started telling people that, somebody need to check the books. They need to check the books, implying that Berry Gordy was stealing from them. And I'm pretty sure that Berry probably took some money off the top. I'm sure he did, but sir, you can't just come around Motown and around the people in Motown making these type of claims. You wasn't prepared with a lawyer or anything. You wasn't prepared with anything. You just come up here and start talking about the boss. And of course, as soon as Barry hears this, he's like, who books? Is you crazy? You think that I'm gonna let somebody come in and look at my books? Who are you? I am the boss. And that's pretty much the attitude that Barry had, which I could have told David that. And soon after that, David found himself without a group. And as soon as he found himself without a group, baby, he started acting a plumb fool, honey. Following them around, jumping on stage, stealing the mic from folks. They up there singing and he back in the back. But David Ruffin right here though. But David Ruffin right here. He just doing all this crazy stuff, basically trying to bring attention to himself. When that did not work for him and nobody really cared about him doing all that, that is when he finally dropped his pride and he did beg and ask to be back in the group. And the group said no. And David got petty, child. He got petty, honey. Next thing you know, they getting hit with lawsuits back to back. David Ruffin trying to sue. He's suing them, y'all, for anything and everything. All you see, David Ruffin versus the Temptations. David Ruffin versus the Temptations. But what David didn't know is that Otis could get even more petty than that, boo-boo. Don't do Otis, sir. Because Otis, and I'm sure Barry was probably involved with this too, they started suing David back. They started firing lawsuits back at David. You want to play this game? Okay, don't worry. We're going to sue you for wasting studio time, or we're going to sue you because we paid for this and you didn't show up. It was just a big mess. Thankfully, both parties pretty much dropped the lawsuits and they stopped being petty after a while. Things got patched up so well between David and Motown that eventually they even signed David again as a solo artist. And he put out some good songs. And a few of them did some good things. But it was nothing near the success he had with the Temptations. And David could have kept trying. He could have kept trying to put out music. He could have kept doing whatever he was doing to make it. But he just did not. He fell into the trap of drugs. Throughout all of this, Jenna Sapia is still there. She's still there waiting at home for David along with her son, little David. She's going through this trauma with David. She is by his side and he repays her by marrying another woman. And this woman's name was Joy Hamilton. And I'm sure it probably broke something in Jenna. You know what I'm saying? Because she's the one that was always there. But I believe that was the problem right there. It's not that I don't think that he loved Jenna, but she never got that ring and he proposed and married other women instead of her because I feel like she was just always there. There's no telling how many times she actually left the house and probably stayed a couple of weeks. Who knows? But if she would have actually officially ended their relationship early on when he started to mistreat her, cheat on her, I have no doubt in my mind that sooner or later he probably would have proposed to Jenna. But what's the reason for marrying her if she's already gonna be there? There's nothing to gain from that. Why would I marry you? Why would I do that? You're already here. You're going to be here. I can come home to you every night after doing what I want to do. What's the purpose of marrying you? I'm not saying that's what it was. I'm just telling you the way that I feel about the situation. Whatever the case though, Jenna didn't have to cry for long because the marriage to Joy Hamilton only lasted 1 year. It was either from 1975 to 1976 or from 1976 to 1977. There are conflicting sources on that. Even after David's marriage with Joy Hamilton, though, I think Jenna was still there. I think some people say she left, but from what I researched, she was with David Ruffin for 20 years. If she got with the man in 1964, that means she didn't leave until 1984. So after it didn't work with Joy, back to Jenna. As time moves along, public interest in David Ruffin gets lower and lower, and David's behavior becomes worse and worse because his addiction becomes worse and worse. And so the arrests start to rack up. In 1978, David is arrested for acting a fool at somebody's birthday party in Memphis, Tennessee. I don't know who it was, and I don't know what David was doing, but clearly he was doing the most. The police got called, and when he was arrested, the police even said that David was telling them, I kill you. I'm gonna kill your wife, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill your family as soon as y'all let me free. That don't even sound like David Ruffin to me. I'm sorry. I don't believe those policemen. I just don't. That doesn't sound like him. And I don't think anybody else believed it because he was eventually released. In 1982, he was charged with a $5,000 fine and he was sentenced to 6 months in jail. And that is because he had back taxes of about $310,000 or somewhere around there. A lot of back taxes that he had not paid. After he served 4 months of his sentence, he was released on good behavior. In 1986, he pleaded no contest to a charge of concealing stolen property. But child, the property was less than $100, honey. Y'all go ahead and let that man go. It was like an old beat up handgun or something like that they arrested him for because it was in his possession. David ended up paying the $50 fine and the $100 in court costs, and he was let go. In July of 1987, David was arrested again, and this time he spent just probably a few nights in jail because he was in a Detroit crack house and the police raided the crack house. And at first, they were trying to say that David was dealing the crack. You know, he was selling the crack. But then it became very clear by the way he was acting and looking that David wasn't dealing the crack. David Ruffin was doing the crack. That was still a charge, but they ended up letting him go. And the only thing he had to do was complete a 28-day stay at a rehabilitation center, and he did that. Now, although David is caught up in all this mess, going to jail, doing drugs and all this kind of stuff, he did end up doing a show at the Apollo with Hall and Oates, and that was very successful. It was he and Eddie Kendricks that did that show. So he kind of brought in a little money with that, and he and Jenna were done at this time, okay? So now he was with his new girlfriend, and her name was Diane Showers. And Diane Showers was only 14 years old when she first met David. She was a teenage fan. But by the time he got together with her, she was a grown woman. So she wasn't a teenager anymore, but that's a little fact I wanted to tell you guys. Now, this lady, Diane Showers, is supposedly the lady that he showed up with to his daughter's wedding. One of his daughters got married. I believe it was his daughter Cheryl. So she got married and David wasn't even there to walk her down the aisle. He didn't even show up for that part. He showed up in the middle of the wedding with his girlfriend on his arm, came and sat down, and then he was just there to eat the food. This same person also, though, said that Eddie Kendricks showed up at the wedding too, but he showed up with a woman that like kind of looked like a man dressed as a woman. So people were speculating if the woman was transgender. I don't know. I don't even know if this story is true, but I'm telling you what I read. In 1991, David cleaned up himself enough. He, Eddie Kendricks, Dennis, they all went over to Europe and they toured over there and they made a lot of money doing that. They gave a great performance. I'm not sure exactly how much money they made, but I know it shouldn't have been anything less than $50,000. It is said that after all of the performances are over, David was like, okay, we performed, where my money at? And the people are like, you know, you sir, you gonna get your money? We're gonna send you your money, or we're gonna give you a check and we'll cash it later. And David was like, no sir, y'all not gonna play me. Give me my money right now in cash in my hand. And so he would not leave the facility, the premises, or anything until they gave him $50,000. I think that was the amount, okay? Until they gave him some large amount in a suitcase, he took his money and that is when he left. When he got back to the U.S., apparently he stopped by to see Diane and then he left the house. On June 1st, 1991, David Ruffin was brought by limousine to the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. When he got out of the limousine, he was escorted into the hospital. I mean, he was leaning on the guy's shoulder, of course, but somebody helped him into the hospital, which was the limousine's driver. The limousine's driver then walked up to the desk, told the lady that this is David Ruffin. He's having a problem. Can somebody help him? Okay. They rushed David to the back. By the time he got to the back, he was already dead. They tried to resuscitate him, but there was nothing he could do. And at 3:55 a.m., the medical staff gave up on their efforts and David Ruffin was pronounced dead. Now, it later came out that David was in a crack house and he collapsed from a drug overdose. That's one version. Another version says it was a heart attack. Another version said that he had an adverse reaction from the drugs and that's what killed him. But a lot of his family believed that David Ruffin was murdered because apparently David had $40,000 in his possession, and by the time they got to the hospital, the $40,000 was gone. They think that either somebody murdered him and robbed him of that money, or they feel like when he came into the hospital, somebody took that money from him. Now, I read another report that the hospital said that yes, David Ruffin did have $40,000 on him, and he had $40,000 on him when the family came. So from the report I read that's allegedly from the hospital, they are pretty much like, don't accuse us. That $40,000 was still there. One of y'all took that money. And now y'all trying to act like somebody took the money. No, somebody in the family took the money. But I'm not sure which version is true. So, that's going to be up to y'all. When investigators started to investigate David's death, I think they were looking around for the limo driver, but apparently nobody would give them the limo driver's name. And they also found out that a man named William Noel died the same night as David Ruffin, and he died from crack as well. And he had split his vial with 10 other people. So they were trying to see if that crack that William Noel smoked was the same kind that David Ruffin smoked, and they were trying to find out who the crack dealer was. Y'all know, trying to find out who they could pin the deaths on. Eventually, nothing panned out and nobody was charged with anything. Michael Jackson ended up paying for, but not attending, David Ruffin's funeral. And y'all, here go a little bit of tea that I didn't know about, child. So, they all crying and, singing all over the casket and stuff. And then how about Eddie Kendricks, y'all? He was crying, he leaving the funeral just, David, please, why, David, why? And baby, while he was saying, why? Some handcuffs got put on his wrist, honey. Yes! They ought to be ashamed of themselves, honey. As soon as Eddie Kendricks walked out of that church, the police went and put handcuffs on that man, and they said it was because he owed $26,000 in back child support, but they ain't have to do it like that. That's just messy, sitting up there and arrested that man, embarrassing him in front of all them folks. So now the official Old Hollywood scandalous tale on David Ruffin is done, but honey, I gotta add in a little bit more scandal, child. The scandal, honey. It was also said that David Ruffin messed around with Diana Ross. Not only Diana Ross, he also messed around with Mary Wilson. I don't believe this either because from what I know, David Ruffin could not stand Diana Ross or Mary Wilson. He apparently didn't like Diana Ross because he didn't like how nasty she was. That Queen Bee act, he didn't like that. He didn't like Mary Wilson because he felt like she would sleep around with too many people. He felt like she didn't have any class about herself. But who knows? Maybe he did want to sleep with them. Maybe he was turned down. Maybe that's why he called Mary Wilson trash, because he did try to sleep with her, but she turned him down. I don't know. And honey, here go the juiciest tea of all, but I don't believe it's true. But anyways, there's this author named Mark Ribowski, and he wrote a book, I think, called Ain't Too Proud to Beg. And it is said that in that book, he tried to insinuate that David Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks were sleeping with each other. Like that they were bisexual men and they were sleeping with each other. I don't believe that. I just don't. I'm not saying that it's impossible. I just don't believe that about either man. So take that how you will. But anyways, this wraps up this video, guys. I love you so much. Please share, like, subscribe, comment, tell me how you feel. Thank you for your patience. I am so appreciative of that. I will see you guys very soon with the next video. Love you guys.